this up and take it across to our other guests. We have Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser, who's a former head of Military Intelligence Research Division. We also have Scott Lucas, who's a professor of international politics at the University College Dublin. Let me begin with you, Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser. What are we looking at potentially in terms of Israel's retaliation? Of course, it said that it will retaliate at a time and a place of its choosing, but given the fact that Israel's fairly far, about over 1,500 kilometers away physically from Iran, we're looking at a potential airstrike. What could be the potential targets? What could we be potentially looking at in coming days?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And secondly, coming back to your question, it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen because there's a variety of potential targets that Israel may try to hit. What Israel has done in the recent weeks is to prove that this distance between Israel and Iran is not an obstacle for carrying out an attack against Iran, because we have just, for the second time, attacked targets in Yemen, the Houthis in Yemen, and this is farther than Iran from Israel. It's 1,800 kilometers, whereas Iran is only somewhere between 1,300 and 1,700 kilometers away from Israel. So it's not something that we cannot do, and we have been preparing ourselves to this eventuality for a long time, not only building the capability to intercept the incoming Iranian missiles, but also building the capability to hit targets in Iran. That's why we equipped ourselves with a lot of F-35 airplanes. That's why we are practicing this eventuality again and again by ourselves and together with our American friends, so that we shall be able to do whatever is necessary. The most plausible targets that we are looking at is the Iranian nuclear program. You described extremely well how this is deployed and located all around Iran, but we have to remember that the Iranians now are in a position where they are very close to having enough fissile material, or so enough highly enriched uranium to produce fissile material for a considerable arsenal of nuclear weapons within a very short period of time.
Right.
And what we've seen yesterday was how dangerous Iran is without nuclear weapons. Just imagine how dangerous Iran is going to be with nuclear weapons. That's why I think that the most
well, the world is watching very closely, and we certainly hope there is no escalation on the nuclear front. But Scott Lucas, that's a very real and distinct possibility, and therefore the targets could possibly be, in fact, the nuclear facilities. But beyond that, what is the kind, at a time when there is a potential fighting, on the conventional lines that is expected to take place in Lebanon. On the other hand, we're looking at airstrikes that are the possibility in Iran. How are we going to see all of this play out? Because, with the strong backing of the United States, is Israel really in a position to have a long-drawn conflict?
Well, I think the first area of concern is not a direct Israel-Iran conflict. I need to explain that. First of all, one of the reasons why Israel and its allies were so effective in preventing civilian casualties and most of the missiles being fired on military positions was because Iran notified Arab countries in advance that the attack was coming. Those Arab countries probably notified the United States, who notified Israel. Why would Iran do that? Iran did that because it wanted to show to its own people, after Hezbollah, Hamas, Iranian figures had been assassinated by Israel, that Iran was still tough. It was still there to fight. But at the same time, the Iranian regime didn't want to get into a direct confrontation with Israel. They know they're outgunned by the Israelis. So they have what is called a demonstration strike. It still is a very scary thing for Israelis to face, but it was largely for show rather than to cause massive damage. The second reason why I think we're not talking about an Iran-Israel confrontation is that the biggest winner last night from the Iranian attacks was the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What he has now is the space to continue an open-ended war in Gaza, even as the death toll there nears 42,000 in almost a year. And he has the space to pursue the operations in Lebanon with the beginnings of a ground invasion, which occurred only yesterday. The reason why Netanyahu has been saved by the Iranians, only a month ago, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis that were protesting because they wanted a priority on the return of Israel's hostages who have been held by Hamas for almost a year. They wanted that as a priority rather than the destruction of Hamas.
Right.
Netanyahu was under a great deal of pressure. So the response, supported by the military, who for their own reasons wanted a second front.
Well, there is certainly that view that Iran's action has perhaps facilitated what Netanyahu would have wanted and Israel would have wanted to that extent. Certainly, of course, those are the views that are being expressed by many. Scott Lucas as well as Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser, I'd like to thank both of you for joining us.